Thank you, Adam, for kicking things off and for the introductions. Welcome to today's webinar, Business Intelligence Strategy, a Real-World Perspective. My name is Shahab Chowdhury, and I work in Strategic Services at Collabra. I'd like to share a little bit about Collabra, give you some background on who we are, what we do. As a company, we have services in the strategic area of business intelligence and data warehousing, but we also have capabilities to be able to follow through on those advisory type of services with implementation services such as design and development of data warehouse solutions. Over the years, we've worked with a number of very large companies and have helped them implement similar solutions. Some of these I will be talking about in more detail later on in this presentation today. Hopefully the objective today that I'm coming in with, and hopefully you share with me, is that I will be able to share with you what we think of BI strategy and what our point of view around that is. Hopefully be able to share an approach that goes beyond just being able to create some type of a report that you could call a BI strategy, something that's a little bit more tangible and a lot more actionable, and also be able to separate what is being, I call, hype in the industry around this whole area about BI strategy. I'm also looking to be able to compare notes with you by getting your feedback towards the end of this discussion today by way of your questions and comments on what you thought about our point of view. So with that in mind, I'd like to jump in and share with you what we have observed over the years. When we think about BI strategy, it is something that is mentioned and we think in every top 10 list of areas of focus. A lot of CIOs have focused on it over the years, and we find that many companies have at least tried to do something along these lines, in some cases a number of different times. But unfortunately, there's quite a few horror stories around it, and we find that a lot of this has to do with the fact that when people think about something strategic, they unfortunately end up taking on something very large. The boil the ocean approach in these cases unfortunately does not work. Also, we find that when we talk about BI strategy, a lot of these approaches that are out there are very, very academic. So they are not very well grounded in being able to follow through with an actionable strategy. With those observations, what we have tried to do is to be able to think about how do we go about changing some of those things that we have observed in the industry as failures. Well, first of all, to start with, what is a BI strategy? And I'm sure if you went around this room and asked everybody this question, we would get very varied responses in terms of what everybody thinks about when it comes to BI strategy. And that obviously is a very big part of what you should be defining before you start a BI strategy. So the questions listed on the left-hand side, I would say all of those are in some way, shape, or fashion a part of the BI strategy. The question really is to be able to define those in a way that best defines BI strategy for you. So I guess I would leave you on this slide with a minute of thinking around one cookie cutter approach around BI strategy does not fit large organizations. You have to be able to define that on your own and be able to define the scope of what your BI strategy will entail. In terms of a framework that you may be able to use, these are some of the components that we have put together as the components that we think make up a good BI strategy. Obviously, you have to be able to measure these components. You have to be able to then put together a plan that defines your strategy around these components, and then you have to be able to act on those. So just going through these, this list is obviously a very abstracted list of some of the elements and the components. Beneath each one of these areas is a lot of detail about what does value and usability mean, what does it mean when we talk about metadata. And like I said earlier, each one of these could possibly mean different things to different organizations, and the key to success really is in being able to define these in sort of a vocabulary that makes sense to your organization. As you look at those components, the next key piece then obviously is to be able to understand your maturity as it pertains to those components. So at Collabra, we have defined something called the maturity model around business intelligence that we have been able to successfully use to be able to help organizations in terms of understanding their level of maturity when it comes to business intelligence. It is nothing but a simple 5-stage model that helps you plot where you are, also helps you understand where you're starting from and where you need to be going and what's the cost of moving from stage 1 to stage 5, and every successive stage as you go from between stage 1 and stage 5. Obviously the key there is to be able to find a sweet spot of what is the point at which you'll get the maximum return, and be able to identify that and then have strategies that help you get there. As I talked about the components earlier, we apply this maturity model to all of those various different components and help you understand, for example, where are you when it comes to talking about BI delivery process on a stage 1 through stage 5 type of a maturity model. It becomes very important to be able to understand that, as I said, before you embark on a strategy. So if you were to look at that from a BI maturity perspective, if you were able to measure where you are from a current state perspective, and you were also able to identify what your future or desired state may look like when it comes to all those different components that we have been talking about, obviously the big question then is, how do you go from point A to point B? Where do you start? How much money will it take? What's the amount of effort that will be involved? What kind of a sequence do you need to go in, and what kind of dependencies may exist? So thinking through those strategies and tactics that will get you from the current state to the future state is the secret sauce, if you will. And that's where we have experience that we can bring to bear from having done this with other companies. And I would say that's where you need to be looking at a good actionable roadmap that will get you from point A to point B, that has very measurable tactics outlined in various different phases that help you understand how you can get from point A to point B, and you can plot those on a timeline as well, obviously. To further dive deeper into that current state assessment, we have also used a tool that goes hand in hand with this roadmap, where we are able to get that baseline on that maturity model established by conducting various different types of surveys within your organization. These surveys obviously give you a lot more granular data, and they are instrumental in being able to understand and plotting your baseline. So once you have all of these components, what is an approach that could potentially get you there? And what I'd like to do is to be able to share how we approach these kind of problems and hopefully get your feedback on that today. So if you're looking to define a survey that could potentially be used within your company, break it down by division, by department, by the various different ways that you look at your business, we would want to be able to look at that and say, now that we've decomposed that problem according to your functional areas, if we could conduct a survey in all of those different areas, we are able to then understand what is the baseline. And the baseline may vary, your maturity may vary from one department to another. You may also be able to look at the maturity of one department within one division with another department within another division. You may be able to look at differences in geographies, in terms of, you may be able to look at differences in size and the types of different businesses that you may have within your company. And so if you were able to plot that maturity for each one of those different components that matter within your business, then you're able to obviously look at what actions and tactics would you apply to that business unit. So what we're suggesting here is that one size fits all for an enterprise-wide BI strategy is obviously too large and too abstracted a solution, and you want to get more granular when you approach not only your maturity model but also your action plan for your organization. Let's talk a little bit about how you go about conducting these surveys. We have worked with some people in academia to be able to do some research to find out what are the types of behaviors and what are the types of beliefs that people might have that are worth measuring within an organization when it comes to business intelligence. And so we recommend 3 types of different questions that we ask. I'll start at the bottom, which is the semi-structured questions, which go into obviously finding out more about how people use business intelligence and data within an organization. We obviously want to be able to also ask them open-ended questions, which are unstructured questions where we are able to allow them to be able to respond to any of the pains or needs that they might be feeling. But then the most important type are the psychometric questions, and we'll talk a little bit more about these. These are a lot more quantifiable, and from any one point in time to a later point in time, you could use the same questions and be able to do an apples to apples